We'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the American Society of Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers Young Professionals Virtual Workshop and Networking event sponsored by Bayer. Appreciate your time, especially after a long day worth of work. We've got an exciting event planned. Go ahead and go to the second slide. Very good. My name is Justin Patterson. I'm an ARA, the chair of the YPN Leadership Committee, and I'll be the moderator for this event. Thank you for joining us. And first, I will give a brief update about the YPN for 2020. But before I do that, I want to recognize Grant Fitzgerald as the vice chair on the farm manager side. Thank you to all the YPN Leadership Committee members for your service and for joining us this evening, and a very special thanks to all of the YPN chapter reps who are with us this evening. The YPN Leadership Committee is currently planning to launch a series of virtual events scheduled every other month starting the first quarter of 2021. The event will be open to all YPN aged members and will include any updates, a micro-learning topic, and/or networking topics. Some topic ideas that we have decided to cover will be the history of the society, accreditation, mindfulness, a council meet and greet, and entrepreneurship. Stay tuned for more information as we enter the new year. Next, although many in-person chapter meetings have been canceled, we encourage all YPN members to still hold events virtually. Reach out to the YPN committee chairs and the American Society staff to help with ideas and organizing, or for anything else you may need. The program will proceed with a word from our sponsor, Bayer. Bayer is a longtime sponsor of the American Society and a big supporter of the YPN programs. Ron Dunker, Regional Farm Management Business Manager at Bayer, is here to tell us a little more. Ron, have you joined us?
I don't see Ron as joining us yet. I've reached out again, and hopefully he's able to join us at the end, but we do want to thank Ron and Bayer. They're a constant sponsor of YPN events and ASFMRA in general. So thank you very much for sponsoring this, and we'll hear from Ron at the end if he's available.
Very good. Thank you, Kendra. So a little bit about the program today. It's going to consist of a 30-minute workshop. Then we'll have breakout rooms for discussions and networking. At that time, feel free to locate your favorite evening beverage if you have not already, and loosen up for a very fun team trivia competition that will happen later. So I want to kick it off with our speaker. Nihar is an award-winning writer and inspirational storyteller. Welcome, Nihar.
Hey, everybody. How are you doing? Thanks for the introduction, Justin. Hopefully everybody's keeping the energy up after a day's worth of work. I know that we're in the beginning of the week, so it's easy to lose steam pretty fast. I will share my screen. Hopefully it works. All right, cool. Can everybody see my screen? Awesome. So Justin gave a bit of a background about me, but I am a writer. I actually go around parts of the world and write stories on various topics. One of them is leadership, which I'm going to talk to you about today. I also write about other things, just inspirational stories that I come across. And then in addition to my writing, I also work right now at a tech startup called Jobcase, and I help them think about their product strategy and how to develop their product and pitch it to the audience that they're going to go after. So I kind of like to bridge this intersection between storytelling and also strategy. And that's what I'll talk to you about today, is leadership and strategy. So before I start, I have a question for everybody. And I think Zoom has a reaction button somewhere in the bottom. So I'll get a little bit of participation, hopefully. But if I was to ask you, if you were to think about throughout your life, if you can think about an inspirational leader or a memorable leader, would one come to mind? If one does come to mind, react with any sort of reaction on Zoom. All right, looks like we've got almost everybody, probably about half. Okay, so that's good. Now let's say that it's good that everybody can think of one leader that they remember. Now let's say if I asked you to remember 10 leaders off the top of your head really fast, would you be able to remember 10? If you can react with a reaction. Almost nobody. Okay, so that's kind of what I was expecting. And the reason I think a lot of you would probably say is that good leaders are pretty hard to come by, right? Like you remember one or two. If I'm thinking over my lifetime, I remember one or two leaders that had an impact on me, but it's really hard to think about 10. And this actually gets to an interesting problem, if this works, and it does work. So in the US, right, there is this company called Gallup that actually goes around and they actually interview different company executives. And they recently went to companies last year and they asked all the executives if they felt their employees had the right leadership skills to succeed at the company. And you know what's pretty mind-boggling is that 82% of companies in the United States felt that their employees didn't have the right leadership skills necessary to succeed. Now, I don't know about you, but that seems like a really high number, right? Is these companies are able to hire their own employees. They can choose from whatever talent pool they want. And yet these people are saying that 82% of the time, they don't have the right employees with leadership skills. So this is a pretty big problem, right? I mean, you yourself are able to demonstrate that you're unable to think about 10 leaders, and we've all lived pretty long lives, right? But we can't even think about more than a few. So it's a pretty big deal. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is, it seems pretty simple on the surface, but 3 lessons, if you can walk away from today with these 3 lessons, I guarantee that you will be able to distinguish yourself and make yourself a better leader. And it's a pretty big task, right, to become a really good leader. But with these 3 lessons, I think you'll at least be able to head in that direction of differentiating yourself. So lesson 1, sounds simple. Has anybody heard of Simon Sinek? Maybe? No? Okay, I see some heads nodding. One person has. Okay, good. So Simon Sinek, actually, one of his famous principles was what you're looking at here, this illustration. And it's something called the golden circle. It has 3 layers: why, how, and what. So there's something interesting, right? Simon, in his principle, he actually says that most people like me, you, we're ordinary, I think, looking to become extraordinary, but we're ordinary so far. We often tend to think from the outside of this circle in. So if you can see my cursor, we often tend to think day to day what tasks we need to accomplish. Then we think the second level and how we can accomplish those tasks. Maybe you have to go to the grocery store. You think about, all right, I'm going to take my car and go there and get these things. That's how you do it. But rarely do you stop to think about why you need to do these tasks, right? Like how many times do you stop to think about why you're going to the grocery store? Probably never. But what Simon says is that actually the most inspirational leaders, let's say that 1 or 2 leaders that you remembered in the beginning of this presentation, he actually says that those leaders completely think the opposite way. So they'll actually start first with the why, and then they'll work their way out. So they completely flip around the way of thinking. They don't actually think about what they need to do until they have such a strong purpose. And that strong purpose, again, seems super simple, but it makes all the difference. So if we take an example, who wants to volunteer very briefly for a quick question?
I will.
All right. I am unable to see your name on Zoom for some reason.
Grant Fitzgerald.
Grant. Okay, cool. Grant. Okay. Let's say, what's your favorite room in your house?
My sunroom.
Your sunroom? Okay. So let's say the middle of your sunroom has become a big lava pit, and you're on one side of the sunroom and you have to get to the other side. And let's also say that you have no shoes, so you're going to go barefoot. If I gave you $20, would you go to the other side of the room?
Yes.
Really? Over the lava?
No, I'd go outside in the background.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, wow, you're a madman.
Otherwise, no.
Okay, yeah. So as expected, right? I think most rational people probably wouldn't attempt to walk over lava with bare feet for $20. Measly reward. But now let's say, who's somebody that matters heavily to you in your life? Brother, sister, significant other, maybe?
Wife and son.
Okay, wife and son. So let's say your wife and son are on the other side of the sunroom. They can't escape any other way. They're still there. You're still barefoot. The middle of the room is still lava. Would you at least attempt to get to the other side? Even if it meant burning yourself?
No doubt. Yep, of course.
Yeah, no doubt, right? And in fact, like what changed in that scenario? Nothing changed. It's literally, if you think about it, the purpose of why you're going across the room changed, right? Nothing changed but the why. And the thing is that if you have such a strong purpose, if you define your why in such a way that's so powerful, regardless of what the obstacle is, even if it means going across lava, seeming like a madman with bare feet, you'll attempt to do it because your purpose is that powerful. And it can make a big difference, right? And that's what differentiates the best leaders from everybody else, is the fact that they spend most of their time thinking about the why. They create such a powerful purpose that it actually inspires everybody else around them as well. And let me tell you a story. This is actually where the storytelling piece, what I find really fun, comes into play, that actually tells you why this makes a lot of sense. So in 2008, I actually got a chance to meet this guy named Mishkin when I was doing some traveling. Have all of you heard of the company McKinsey before in the business world? It's like a really, really high impact consulting company. It's almost like the gold standard if you're in business. If you tell people you work at McKinsey, they're like, wow, that's like the best company that you could possibly work at. So this guy, Mishkin, actually used to work at McKinsey. And he basically had a salary, I think, actually as a sort of just like estimate, right? Most college grads who come out of school, they tend to want to work at McKinsey. And if you are able to get a job at McKinsey, they're already making over $90,000 per year coming out of school working at McKinsey as like a 21-year-old, right? So that's really impressive. So Mishkin was actually working at McKinsey as a consultant. So he's 2-3 years above the entry level. So easily making over $100,000 per year. Now, you can imagine that's almost what a lot of people dream of becoming, right? A consultant making over 6 figures. That's almost the dream for every American. And one day, Mishkin had this thought of deciding to go on a trip, just like sort of like a year off type of thing. So he decided to take a 2-week trip to India just to get out of his comfort zone a little bit. And kind of an interesting trip. He decided he wanted to motorcycle across India with one of his friends who happened to be a doctor. I don't know if any of you have seen videos of India or the traffic situation there, but I don't recommend ever motorcycling across India. It's like they have lanes, but nobody actually follows them. Things are crazy, right? And not to mention the air quality is not the best. So it's like motorcycling across the entire country. It seems like it's almost like a death trap. Anyways, Mishkin and his friend decide they want to do this. So Mishkin and his doctor friend, they make this plan that they're going to meet up in this town just 2 hours north of Mumbai. And Mumbai is a massive city in India. So they were going to land in Mumbai and then meet in this town 2 hours north and then start their motorcycling trip from there. So they decided that they would travel independently, meet up in this town. Mishkin lands in Mumbai, goes 2 hours north to this town. And when he gets there, his friend actually isn't there. And I think it's natural. Some people are just late sometimes. So Mishkin decides to wait for 30 minutes, but his friend still doesn't show up. So eventually he gets a little restless, right? And a little bit worried. You're traveling to this foreign country. Your friend hasn't shown up. You don't know when your trip is going to start. It's a little bit scary. So Mishkin starts asking everybody in this town. He basically pulls out his phone. He's like, have you seen my doctor friend? He looks like this, dimensions, height, whatever. Nobody actually remembers his friend. And then finally one person says, yeah, I actually did see your friend. And he actually went over to that hut over that way because one of the ladies was actually in labor and he went to go help deliver her baby. Now in rural India, right, like healthcare is almost inaccessible. So it's actually really common for like random people who might be around, especially in this case, a doctor, to go help with deliveries. So Mishkin's like, okay, so he goes and waits outside the hut. Obviously, he doesn't want to encroach on any privacy or anything like that during a delivery, but he waits for his doctor to be done with the delivery so that they can then start their motorcycling trip. Now, 1 hour goes by and still his doctor friend doesn't come out. 2 hours go by, 4 hours go by, and then finally the sun is starting to set. And Mishkin at this point is really wondering what is happening, right? Because it doesn't usually take that long for a delivery. And who knows, like maybe when you were younger or at any point in your life, like you can tell when somebody has done something wrong. Maybe you have some kids and you can tell by their body language that like they've done something wrong, right? Immediately from their face. And so Mishkin's friend, actually, when he comes outside, Mishkin can immediately tell from his face, like his face looks like he's seen a ghost. Like he's like, wow, something bad has happened. So Mishkin, he asks his doctor friend, he said, what happened in there? And his doctor friend immediately, actually, you could tell he's like about to cry. He actually says both the mother and her child died during the delivery. And the reason why was because of a condition known as anemia. Does anybody know what anemia is here? Have you heard of it? So it's a condition where there's a deficiency of iron in your blood, and it's actually really common in rural India because of the diet. And Indians are actually just a little bit predispositioned to have anemia. They have a higher tendency to have that. And it's actually such a common cause that the government in India actually has set up like just free stations where you can get iron tablets. So for Mishkin, it hurt a lot because he actually remembered on the way from Mumbai to this town 2 hours north, he actually passed several of those stations. And so you can imagine if he knew that this woman was anemic, he could have picked up some of these iron tablets and it could have helped her, right? So it's like kind of a kick in the face that like I could have potentially saved this woman's life. But getting back to starting with the why, Mishkin suddenly had his purpose, right? He thought about this why, and he knew that at that point, he never wanted to see anybody die of anemia again in India. And it's such a big problem that actually every single minute, I've maybe been telling this story for what, like 5 minutes? Every single minute, one mother and a child die of anemia. So in 5 minutes, 5 people have already died. So it's a big problem. Mishkin couldn't stop thinking about this his entire trip in India. And as soon as he gets back to the US, remember I told you about that really nice McKinsey job he had? Guess what? Immediately, because his why is so strong, he decides that he wants to quit his job and attempt to move to India in order to try solving the problem of anemia. Now, keep in mind, he's a guy in business. He doesn't know anything about healthcare. He doesn't know anything about anemia. I don't know anything about anemia. He doesn't know anything about technology, and he's not even Indian. So imagine moving to like a foreign country like Russia, not knowing anything about it. Pretty big obstacle. But if your why is that powerful, you can do it. What's even more impressive is that on the way to India, he actually convinced 3 of his friends to come with him because his purpose was that powerful. So imagine how good your friends must be if they're also willing to pick up their bags and move to India with you. Crazy. But that's what having such a powerful purpose can do. And the story, I think, even gets better. So his 4 friends, they go there, they're all there together. They know nothing about healthcare, nothing about India. They start talking to some healthcare professionals in India, and they actually start building this machine called Touch HB. It's almost this small, actually, if you read about it. It's a small machine that can refract light and essentially tell somebody whether they're anemic or not. And so they started building this out, and in such a way that it was so affordable that they could distribute it to all these small rural villages in India, and they could tell anybody, whether they were a healthcare professional or not, whether they were anemic or not. So all of a sudden, they actually were able to build this machine, start distributing it to all these different villages in India, and people were certainly able to tell whether they were anemic or not, and the government could then send iron tablets to all these different villages. And the most impressive part of it is that as of recently, that invention, Touch HB, and Mishkin's company, Biosense, was actually in the top 10 most innovative healthcare inventions put out by the World Health Organization. And I'm not saying that to start with the why, you have to go quit your job and we all should go quit our jobs and move to Russia. But what I am saying is that next time you're thinking about some sort of task, or anytime you might want to inspire people around you, try to frame it with the why instead. Try to make it obvious as to what the purpose of why you're doing it is. And then if the purpose is framed powerfully enough and the purpose is strong enough, then people will move mountains, and you will also find yourself moving mountains to go accomplish that task no matter what. And that's what Mishkin did. Just the why was that powerful, and that's what made the big difference. So something that seems super simple on the surface, but can make a big deal, and I think will really separate you as a leader. You'll find that most other people think about the what before the why, but if you can think about the why before the what, it'll make a big difference. That's lesson 1. Lesson 2, so obviously once you have the why, you are ready to go. But actually the execution part of it is important too. You have to execute with courage. Again, seems super simple, but executing with courage is really important. So when I've been traveling around, sometimes I like to just do random surveys, I guess just for fun. And one survey that I did was I actually asked people how many of them felt that they had achieved either their professional or career aspirations. Can anybody take a guess at how many people felt that they had achieved their career or professional aspirations? A percent, throw out a percent. I see a 10. Anybody else?
5.
5. Oh, wow. All right, everybody's guessing low. Yeah, so you're actually pretty close. So 8% of people felt that they had achieved their professional or career aspirations. I guess everybody's guessing low, but to me, 8% seems very low. I mean, that's
It
saying
should be
92.
higher.
Yeah, I think it should be higher, right? Like 92% of people are saying that they haven't achieved their professional or career aspirations. And so then I actually had the same question, is why do this many people feel like they haven't achieved their professional or career aspirations? And what's interesting is that most of those people, the people who said they hadn't achieved those aspirations, they said that it was because they couldn't build up the courage to take the first step towards their aspirations. And so I think that even if you're able to build up the courage to go outside your comfort zone, to take the first step towards whatever you want to do, regardless of what it is, then that alone is enough to differentiate yourself, right? 92% of people don't have the ability to do that. But if you can even take the smallest step, let's say you're scared of talking to somebody, you're scared of writing a cold email, you're scared of making a cold call. If you can make a habit every single day to do one thing that takes you out of your comfort zone, let's say that you're scared of talking to somebody, make it a habit every single day to talk to somebody new. Maybe once coronavirus ends, but maybe for now you can send somebody a cold email to get out of your comfort zone. That will differentiate you. And there's another story that I want to tell that actually puts this moral right in its place, which is why executing with courage is so important. And this one is actually in 2018. I'm just trying to think back to the time frame because this year's felt like a blur with coronavirus and all. It was like the beginning of 2020, and now it's all of a sudden the end of 2020, which feels pretty crazy. I don't know if anybody else feels that way. But this was in 2018, and I actually traveled to this place called Korogocho, which is a really poor slum right outside of Nairobi in Kenya. And I think some of you may have potentially before seen some maybe like TV series about like slums in Africa, and it's almost exactly what you see on TV. So to describe Korogocho a little bit, there's 200,000 people that live in a 0.6 mile radius. So think about that, 200,000 people in a 0.6 mile radius. To put that in perspective, I was actually just looking this up a little bit earlier. New York City, one of the more densely populated cities in the US, has 27,000 people per square mile. So that's like 10 times what New York City's population per square mile is. And in addition to that, what makes this crazier is that 140,000 of the 200,000 people actually don't have jobs because it's a poor slum. So 140,000 people don't have jobs. What do you do when you don't have a job? I guess like majority of the people tend to get into crime, which is what I saw when I was there. But then other people just do odd jobs, like they'll get into working as like a landfill worker, they'll work in a random dump site, they'll do whatever they can to get by, right? And especially if you have kids, you have to do whatever you can do to get by, to have some food for them. And so it's a really bad situation. But it doesn't end there, it gets even worse. There is this dump site right outside of Korogocho called Dendora. It borders Korogocho, sorry. And actually at this dump site, it's basically the only landfill for everybody who lives in Nairobi. So Nairobi is 30 minutes away from Korogocho. This is the landfill for everybody who lives in Nairobi. And it's the only landfill in the area. So there's close to 2,400 tons of just garbage that goes there every single day. Now, I couldn't really think about what 2,400 tons is, so I had to look this up right before this as well. And it's 5 million pounds of trash per day that goes to this landfill every single day. And it's been deemed full since 2003 because there's no other space to actually put the trash. So you can imagine if you're living in Korogocho, all this runoff, basically like toxic runoff from like this overfilled landfill comes into your slum as well, in addition to the 200,000 people living there. And it's so bad that you guys might be familiar that like the UN does like environmental studies every so often. They define like a level that is uninhabitable. So I don't know what those levels are off the top of my head. Maybe somebody can fact check me after the presentation. But the levels, I think they measure like lead, cadmium, and mercury. And when they went to Gorogocho and actually measured these levels, they were almost 201 times higher than what they should be, what is considered like habitable. So that is the backstory for what is about to happen. So when I went in 2018, I met this girl, actually these two girls, they're sisters. One's name is Lucy and the other's name is Chumbana. And Lucy currently is 24, Chumbana's currently 15. But this actually occurred back in 2009. So as I was mentioning, was that a lot of those 140,000 people are unemployed. They tend to work in the Dandora dump site, finding recyclables, plastics, things that they can sell to recyclers just to make some money. So Lucy and Chumbana actually used to do this when they were kids. They used to work in the landfill and they used to get some recyclables. They used to find odds and ends and basically sell them for money. And that's how they would get by. One day, Lucy's in this dump site and she finds a pair of rollerblades actually that somebody's just kind of thrown out. And luckily, usually you just find like one rollerblade, but she actually luckily found like the full pair, both rollerblades. And again, if we're getting to executing with courage, she has never rollerbladed in her life and never even seen rollerblades, but she decides that she wants to go out of her comfort zone. And she actually takes these rollerblades back to her slum. And keep in mind, she's also a female. And in like traditional Africa, most females are just supposed to sort of look after their families. They're not supposed to really do anything else. So she's going out of her comfort zone in two regards. She's first of all trying rollerblading, and then she's trying to also do something that females aren't really supposed to do in Africa. So she kind of just starts rollerblading on the streets, just casually. In the beginning, as you can imagine, she can't even balance herself. She doesn't really know anything about rollerblading. And most people are actually making fun of her because she's a female attempting to rollerblade, which is like unheard of in Africa. But yet execute with courage, right? She goes out of her comfort zone. She rollerblades once every single day. So getting out of your comfort zone once every single day, right? She rollerblades every single day and she doesn't stop. And what happens is something pretty exciting is, well, first of all these kids, actually some of these kids that are in this picture, they're all rollerbladers now, but some of these kids that were in the slum at that time, and they still are, they actually came up to her and they all wanted to try rollerblading too. And she only has one pair of rollerblades. So eventually it got to a point where there were actually 45 kids that were sharing one pair of rollerblades and just like rollerblading for fun. And she was kind of like became their coach. And it got to such a point that she actually started a skating team because, again, executing with courage. She had never started a skating team, but she started a skating team. And it got to the point where this skating team actually became one of the best skating teams in all of Kenya. And it came out of this slum that I described, Gorogocho. So unreal, right? But the only reason it happened was because Lucy, she's actually this girl right here in the red. It's because she executed with courage and went out of her comfort zone. And what's even more amazing is that she, out of the team, she's actually the best speed skater now in all of Africa, not even just Kenya, but the entire continent of Africa. She's one of the best speed skaters. And so again, I know this is a dramatic story with a dramatic example of what can happen if you execute with courage. But going back to the point of even if you do just one thing to just get out of your comfort zone every single day, no matter how small it is, it could even be washing the dishes if you're uncomfortable washing the dishes. But if you even do that, then it can make a big difference and it can differentiate you from all those other people that aren't willing to even get out of their comfort zone. And that's what differentiates good leaders from everybody else. And now the last one, I think I'm already at 30 minutes, but I think I'll go a few minutes over. Hopefully that's okay. The last lesson is you can be the best leader, right? You could always have powerful purpose. You can always have good courage, but if you don't have a good perspective, then people, I don't think, will respect you. And so the last thing to sort of just, the last sort of cherry on top, I guess, is to always keep perspective. And it's really easy, right? To whenever something bad happens to you, inevitably you're going to have an obstacle as a leader in chasing whatever passion you're going after or doing whatever you want to do. Inevitably, there's going to be something that happens. And I don't know about you, but my question always when I have something negative happen is why did it happen to me of all people? Or maybe a swear word as a reaction, one of the two. But it's easy to become negative, right? And so there's just one quick story that I want to tell here about why it's important to keep perspective and how good leaders always have a different perspective from everybody else. So this actually was one that I heard, not one that I directly interviewed the person of because it happened 50 years ago. So this was one that I heard when I was actually in India a long time ago. And there was this one saint who used to be known as Yogiji Maharaj. And he used to live oftentimes in this small state of Gujarat, which was northwest India. I don't know if many of you are familiar with the geography. Geography was never my strong suit. But he used to live there. And actually 50 years ago in India, and even still today in the rural villages, people travel by horse and buggy or bullock cart often. And so he was actually going on this journey to a nearby mango nursery, and with three of his other saints, I guess, as part of like the journey. And so there were four of them total. So they were going on this bullock cart journey to a nearby mango nursery. And back then, like, I mean, I guess they probably had a cheap bullock cart. I don't know how this happened, but they were basically going along and one of the wheels just falls off the bullock cart. It's a really cheap construction, I suppose. And obviously, if the wheel comes off, everybody inside is going to tumble out. So all four of them tumble out of the cart, super bruised up. I would suppose that if I was in that scenario, I would probably be swearing up a storm because, I mean, cursing whoever made the bullet cart and probably attempting to sue them or something. And that's actually what all of Yogiji Maharaj's friends were also doing in the cart. They were basically swearing. And Yogiji Maharaj, for some reason, is like cracking up hysterically. He can't even stop laughing. And so all of his friends were just like, this guy's gone crazy. Like, I don't know why he's laughing so hard after this just happened. We tumble out of a bullock cart and we're all hurt severely. And Yogiji Maharaj just says a few words, simple words during that time. And he says, we were saved. And that puts into perspective, right, is that these people could have gotten much worse injuries. And his friends actually started nodding. They were like, yeah, he's actually right. And really put some light on the situation. And so the takeaway from this one is that, again, a dramatic example, but whenever something negative happens to you or whenever you have an obstacle along the way, the mark of a good leader is that you're able to keep perspective. So instead of having a negative thought, asking why something happened to you, maybe try to just take a breath and think of one positive thing that came about as a result of the obstacle. Maybe some obstacle happened and it made you a little bit better. I don't know. There's always one positive thing. You just have to really search for what the positive thing is. And it's just a different perspective. Most people don't really bother thinking about the positive thing. But if you take a breath, think about one thing positive, people in the room who are around you will really be surprised as to how you can keep such a positive perspective in such a time like that. And it's really surprising how much respect that gives you as a leader. And so these three lessons, if we're looking back, starting with the why, remember Mishkin, remember anytime you're going out to pursue something, try to put the purpose first, and that'll inspire people. Execute with courage, right? Like Lucy, think about one thing that you can do every single day that takes you out of your comfort zone, no matter how small it is. And then this last one, keeping perspective. Try to keep a positive mindset, try to think differently, try to have a different perspective. And the next time something really negative happens to you or you come across an obstacle, think about one positive thing that came about as a result of that obstacle instead of thinking why it happened to you. And if you can do those three things, then I promise you that, again, they seem simple, but I promise you that you will really differentiate yourself as a leader in everyday life. That is all I have. Thanks, everybody. And hopefully you found that fun.
Thank you, Nihar, for the great and thought-provoking message. Thanks for sharing the experiences and nuggets of knowledge with us. I really enjoyed how you're able to share a concept and enrich it with a personal story. And thanks again to Bayer for being our sponsor. So next, let's kick it off for a little bit of fun. So we're going to enter the breakout rooms.